The beer brewed here, it is used to make the brew beer in this refinery. Oh, Earth Rider, thanks for the Great Lake.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please.
Just a catching strays over here.
You're in for a hell of a show.
Keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs.
It's time for our main event.
I feel like all of this is going to seem at some level like elder abuse. But the man is running for re-election for 4 more years.
Yeah.
What the hell was that?
You know, what caught my attention, something we talked about, the laughing for no apparent reason. Did you hear the crowd just kind of like started laughing? And I wonder, you know, some of us worked advance. A lot of people listening to this show worked advance. There's a moment in a politician's event where the advance guys just start clapping in the back to try to get everybody pumped up about this thing George Bush is saying, which is like ostensibly not that interesting.
Do you think that this is like a laugh? It could be a laugh track.
Well, I think he's got advanced guys who are paid interspersed in the crowd that just start laughing.
I just think they've seen it enough, back to the advanced team thing, like they've seen these tangents enough times that they know just to be like,
I'm going to take a completely different...
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. It's like
a
comedian has like a couple people in the crowd that are plants.
Yeah.
I think that's what's going on
I think
here.
you're right.
Total opposite opinion. I think this is very carefully orchestrated. Makes him more relatable. A group that he's going to be definitely losing is male voters, right? That's always been a tough one for him. He wants to be relatable. How many times have you been in a brewery and you just start talking unintelligible by the end of the tour? You've done the tour, and now you want to form the words. They just don't form. In your mind, they're forming.
Yeah.
Right? Totally can relate to him on that.
Yeah, I mean, some of those IPAs hit pretty hard.
Yeah, it's that Dragon Milk. If you went to the Dragon Milk Brewery.
I mean, you sounded like that.
Yeah. That was way better sounding than I was on the show after that Dragon Milk.
You had hard opinions, but the output was the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was some stuff.
But it really is something, because that was the president, I guess, at a brewery.
Yeah.
And he was making off the cuff remarks. They were absolutely unintelligible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, there was nothing about that was clear. People laughed, and they weren't like laughing at
They're not laughing with you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
It was the tough kind of laughing.
I was like, ha ha, oh god, ha ha.
Brutal. Just brutal.
Just absolutely horrific, especially when you have the backdrop of what it is that we're dealing with these days.
Yeah.
And
not a show of strength for the commander-in-chief there.
Not a show of strength by any stretch of the imagination.
On Main Street, local credit unions and community banks are the heart of our small towns. So when these institutions are united in opposition to the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill, Congress should listen. The Durbin-Marshall credit card bill favors corporate megastores like Walmart and Target, shifting costs and risks unfairly onto the credit unions, community banks, and the 135 million customers they serve. Tell Congress to protect America's credit unions and community banks and oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. Visit electronicpaymentscoalition.org to take action.
We're going to try something out on the show here for a few weeks until Wolf gets bored of it, and we'll go in a different direction.
Okay.
But it's occurred to him, and it's occurred to us, that, you know, there's a lot of new listeners these days. And what they'd like to hear is a little off the top about what it is that is the top of the news, and a little analysis, and then we'll get into the rest of this where you can relate. Those of you who've been listening
just get right
forever can hear about everything else. We'll see if it works. When it fails, you can blame Wolf.
Yeah.
When it works, I came up with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. If it works, it's Smug's idea. If it fails, it's Wolf's idea. The rest of us, we just kind of go along with the show. Does that sound good with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
100% on board.
Perfect. Okay. So obviously the top of the news is the Iran-backed attack on American troops in a massive escalation in the Middle East. We've been dealing with this since October 7. There have been incredible amount of overt attacks on America and our allies through Iranian-backed forces, whether it's the Houthis, whether it's, everything is Iranian-backed at this point. But this one's nobody had any. You remember after October 7, everybody was like, I don't know, maybe Iran was involved. Mm-hmm. We were like, well, I mean, they fund Hamas, so why can't you just say that?
Right.
And then they put Kirby and all those guys out, and they were just like, well, we found no definitive links at this point. Well, they didn't have any of the same hesitations on this. And so the upshot of the news, and I think we should just play the first clip if we can, Wolf, to appear as official as we can here on the Variety Program.
Tonight, President Biden, as you just heard, says the United States, quote, shall respond following a deadly drone attack on American troops. He blames an Iran-backed militia for the overnight strike. It happened at a remote base in Jordan near the Iraq-Syria borders, underscoring the spreading violence in the Middle East. At least 3 American service members were killed.
All right, so the AP article, President Joe Biden said Sunday that the U.S. shall respond, quote unquote, after 3 American troops were killed and dozens more were injured in an overnight drone strike in the northeast Jordan near the Syrian border. Biden blamed Iran-backed militias for the first U.S. fatalities after months of strikes by such groups against American forces across the Middle East since the start of the Israel-Hamas war. Biden said in a statement the United States will hold all these people responsible to account at a time and manner of our choosing. I've heard that before. That seems to be basically the rote talking point of administrations looking to respond to something. I like the way it's phrased, but let's think a little bit more strategically.
I remember the first time I heard that was after we had U.S. troops killed in his disastrous withdrawal, and he ended up bombing a van full of kids that had nothing to do with it whatsoever. And to this day, those responsible for killing our troops there in that disastrous withdrawal have not been held accountable. So this is, I guess, now become his just, we've got the, file statement, right? Just fire that out there.
Well, statements is all they do. Think about what they've done with the border. Kamala Harris says, do not come, and that's supposed to stop people from coming to America. Think about what they said about other people getting into the war in Israel, between Israel and Hamas. They said, don't. If you're thinking about doing it, don't. And what's happening? The Houthis start firing missiles. So their talk is really, really cheap. And it's another instance where he's like, oh, well, we're going to do something. Trust me. And
source, trust me, bro.
Right.
Just a refresher, a Google search revealed that post 9/11, George W. Bush talked about responding in a time and manner of our choosing. Mm-hmm. That is a 24-year-old talking point that he's cribbing off of.
That is
wow.
Which is, look, I get it, but it underscores the top of the show, which is this guy does not have the capacity to think through these things. And so you're dealing with a bunch of bureaucrats and everybody else who's pushing stuff around. We all know that the reason we're in this situation to begin with is because of the profound lack of strength that this administration has started and what you were talking about in Afghanistan, but then cascaded through their inability to follow through on very good progress during the Trump administration as it deals with the Middle East. And now here we are.
I mean, I think that's a great comparison to make to start with is this administration, you have now numerous times that U.S. troops have been killed. The response has been a statement. And I remember during the Trump administration, they'd let actions do the talking. Like when he turned Soleimani into salsa, I remember there was just a tidal wave of journalists being like, oh my God, this is going to start World War III. Iran's going to start killing our people. Oh my God. No, it stopped. Mm-hmm. They'd messed around. They'd been putting IEDs trying to attack U.S. troops in Iraq, around the world. It stopped because he let just, drastic violence do the talking for when you cross America. Mm-hmm.
But don't you think, I mean, it's sort of different in one key way, though. The domestic politics of this has changed a little bit, and maybe it's the backdrop of Ukraine and the Gaza war and the withdrawal from Afghanistan. I don't know. But what I did notice is our domestic politics, the reaction online to this attack immediately goes to World War III. Right now, it's not the journalists. Frankly, it's a lot of people on the right as well who, in the discussion and the discourse of how does America respond, are immediately jump to World War III. This is going to start World War III. And then they forget when Donald Trump was president, He turned Soleimani into salsa.
But I think it's a completely different context. So
Why?
I think during the Biden administration, we have seen one foreign policy crisis after another.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Racked up.
Sure.
So it's not like this action, because I remember the Soleimani strike was like a single action that immediately got a response from the left and journos that this is World War III. We've now seen how many global conflicts under Biden due specifically to the weakness that he showed in the aftermath of the Afghanistan withdrawal. I think that just made completely clear to hostile actors around the world that this president is out of office. Like he's not all there, and it's open season on Americans, and it's take whatever you want, anything goes. America is in full retreat, and that became clear afterwards, where you saw, Putin marched right into Ukraine. You see Houthis firing missiles indiscriminately.
I get it.
In
I get it.
shipping
I guess
lanes.
my point is nobody on the right called Trump a neocon shill for taking out Soleimani. And like now there's a contingent on the right, the sort of isolationist libertarian right online, that is already sort of saying that. Like,
well, I've talked about
you know
this.
what I mean?
Yeah, but I've talked about this for years. Every time there is not a Republican president, there is an isolationist libertarian wing of the Republican Party that takes hold, that makes, they're predominantly online, but they have a much more profound point of view that is expressed as a part of a Republican opposition to a president, because you get a whole bunch of people who think maybe differently than they think ideologically on these issues, but they're just opposed to President Biden. So it combines the efforts,
Right.
where it sounds like there's this huge echo chamber of Americans who are like, yes, you can maim 23 American soldiers, kill 3 in an unprovoked attack, and we think responding to it is not a good thing.
Yeah.
It's not something that is in our interests. I think that is the most profoundly stupid argument that I have ever heard my entire life. Maybe it's that I grew up during Reagan Doctrine stuff. Maybe it is that I lived the war on terror, that I was here during 9/11. I don't know what it is. But I think the back end of it is the idea that you have American assets, American people are allies, and that you think that when people just systematically attack and take them out and have no response is not just going to provoke more response is insane to me.
Yeah, what's the commanding officer supposed to say in the letter back to the grieving parents? Like, I'm sorry for your loss, but we will not respond because of fealty to our libertarian principles. I mean, we have thousands of computer-guided weapons that can be fired at a moment's notice on a pinpoint at terrorist locations. Why can't they just use those? What's the opposition?
Well,
It's
of
not
course
like
they can, but like I think
what's the opposition to using a computer-guided? It's not putting a boot on the ground.
It's not. I guess what I would say is I think, some people in the libertarian right like escalate the discourse to this will be World War III because it saves them having to actually articulate what their
you
message,
would do.
And their message is like our American troops wouldn't be there in the first place. And that's an argument. Like we can have that debate and maybe we should have that debate, but that's not really the debate they're having. And that's what I find interesting, right? It's like, instead of having that debate of like, well, our troops shouldn't be there in the first place. And that's an argument, an intellectual argument you could make. You could say we can withdraw from the world, and that's fine. But that's not the argument they're making. What they're saying is this will start World War III.
I think
which I don't think is true, and I don't think they even believe. Ruthless is sponsored by BetterHelp. We're all looking for ways to improve our lives in this chaotic world. And look, I get it. Nobody has the time, whether it's stress at home, at school, at work. Sometimes it makes sense to talk to someone about it, set goals, make plans. If that sounds like you, maybe give BetterHelp a try. BetterHelp offers entirely online therapy designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your busy schedule. You simply fill out a brief questionnaire and you're matched to a licensed therapist. Once you're matched with a therapist, they will reach out and ask you a few questions to get to know you better. You can book a live session right in the app. From there, you can talk to your therapist live by chat, phone, or video call. It's that easy. Celebrate the progress you've already made. Visit BetterHelp.com/ruthless to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/ruthless.
I think a lot of this is rooted in the fact that there was essentially over a decade and a half of this level of mission creep that has led to such skepticism among the public.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Where it's like, okay, what were
You're
we
talking about
supposed to...
Afghanistan and Iraq,
and
basically, right?
Essentially, any foreign policy engagement that the U.S. made for close to 2 decades was like, okay, we were told that, this will either be over in a very quick amount of time, or there was no clear end goal, right? Where it's like, if we accomplish A, B, C, we're out of there.
Yeah.
This is what qualifies as a win.
Yep.
It essentially becomes just like, okay, so are we building a country from scratch? And a number of folks, an entire generation of this country went out there, fought the war,
Yeah.
and if they're fortunate, lives with the consequences.
Yeah,
we lost a ton of folks.
It's just like, I know, but
There was a lot of,
but I'm saying-
and especially in Afghanistan, I think there's a lot of hesitation because we went through $2 trillion in 4 U.S. presidents to go from the Taliban running Afghanistan to the Taliban running Afghanistan.
Yeah, no, I mean,
yeah.
that's
Look, I get it, but what I'm saying is, there's the discourse is dominated by 2 positions. The position is, this will be World War III, or we withdraw and do nothing, which of course takes all nuance out of it. In a lot of these situations, what you're looking for is proportional response that degrades the capability of these terrorist groups to do future attacks, right? Like, that would be a nuanced way to respond to an attack like this on our troops. And I imagine that's what we would do. What I'd be curious of, though, is what would be the response if we did that.
Well, you already know.
You know what I mean?
You already know.
It's
because
informed by...
Do you know what it looked like? It happened on September 11th, 2001. That's what happened. That's what happened. I mean, that is it. That's it. If you're talking about Khobar towers, if you're talking about Marine barracks, if you're talking about bombs around the world that happened all throughout the Clinton presidency in the 90s, where we were focused on Herzegovina and Serbia, that happened.
Right.
And we had multiple chances to try to take out a known threat in bin Laden that was working through a systematic approach to taking out American assets and allies to get to eventually a spot where they could do something more significant than that. It happened on 9/11. And I don't understand. I mean, look, I get that I'm older now, right? And I understand that these lessons came at a formative moment in my life. What I don't understand is how there are adult Americans who were in formative ages during that time who don't understand the profound impact to letting radicalism take over regions that can set up financing and ultimately actionable plans to attack our country. That's what they're trying to do. That's not something that if you just left tomorrow would go away. Talk to the Israelis about this.
No. It's worse than that, because our border has been open for years and years and years, and we know they're here inside of our country. These are actionable plans that they will execute inside of our country with people who walked across the border to do us harm. We know it's coming, and it's just a matter of, are we going to stand up and get ready for it, or are we not?
Yeah,
We know it's coming. We know it's here, and everything that you're saying is exactly right, but it's not just... It no longer is it just the fight them over there so it doesn't come here mentality. No longer is it the Cheney
That's exactly right.
talking point. It's actually here. And if anybody saw what happened in Israel on October 7th, thinks that can't happen inside of this country, they're deluding themselves, because bad people are here and they will do bad things to us.
Yeah, anyway, that's exactly right. And I do agree that there is very much a domestic component to all of that now in a way that probably should have predated 9/11 in terms of visas and how everybody got into our country in the first place. We'll get into that in a minute with the immigration debate. But withdrawing from the war, this is not a binary choice. And for all of you who think that Donald Trump, because it's been explained to you online by a bunch of social media influencers, is some kind of isolationist, go back and review the 4 years of his presidency. Mm-hmm. It was not. There's a reason why they had success. It was a mixture of things like the Abraham Accords with Soleimani. Mm-hmm. The Moab was the first thing this guy did when he got into office.
And I think that's a prime example of his foreign policy.
Eating the
because it was
chocolate
beautiful.
cake. Eating the chocolate cake.
I mean, it was the response was, you're going to have the largest man-made non-nuclear ordinance dropped on you.
Yeah.
Right? And we
I'm
all
gonna
saw
do
the
that-
footage. That thing went off.
and I'm doing it right away.
Yeah.
Right away.
And that's
to
the
send
thing
a
is,
message.
but the response was so quick and easy to understand. Like I think of it almost like training a puppy or a dog, right?
Right.
Where let's say the dog takes a dump inside the house, you roll the paper, you smack it in the face, it knows what happened.
Right.
If you're like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna clean up the shit. We're gonna work on rebuilding. Maybe you need some infrastructure around here. The dog doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah,
That's right.
But if you smack it in the face, the dog's like, I fucked up. Anytime I do this, I get smacked in the face. That was essentially the foreign policy of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Anyone messed up over there, they got smacked in the face instantly.
Remember-
It wasn't like, okay, we're going to work on building schools in a country. We're gonna work
Well,
on
the good thing about terrorist groups is like they're not really pining for schools and roads, So we should be able to just give them the one thing that they want, which is a bomb. Unfortunately, ours will explode on them.
yeah, it is. But I do think, look, we're going to cover a lot about this. My bet is by Thursday we're going to be talking about a whole range of issues as it relates to this. So I want to stay on it, but wanted to give everybody at least initial impressions from us about how this is a lot more nuanced.
Yeah.
Than
the internet discourse.
In the internet
discourse. The choice isn't just neocon chill or do nothing.
Right.
Right. Like let's.
It's a great point.
Come on.
Right. Exactly. So coming up on the show, we're going to also talk about this border security thing you may have been reading and seeing some things about. It comes in a negotiation about the Biden administration request for aid to Israel, aid to Ukraine. Whether or not this makes sense to all of us, we'll give you that view. We got a murderous tiger in Russia.
I like
which
that.
some footage, by the way, Spaghetti tells me there was footage of this murderous tiger that we cannot air here on the Friday.
It was that out of control.
Yeah. It's a murderous tiger that we cannot air.
And
here on the Variety
we
program.
talked about this a little bit in the pre-production meeting. As I understand it, the tiger attacked some dogs or something.
Yeah,
Well, they're dogs, bro. Like,
Yeah, well, my concern is that Ashbrook would have been cheering along the whole way.
Oh.
Because his view on the animal
Are
kingdom.
you kidding? Dogs are man's best friend. They're standing up to this tiger.
Unless they're racing,
Yes.
and in which case that's a useful.
I mean, that's a problem for the
Yeah,
dog
that's
because
cool.
it's like I usually kick the ass of cats. This is not expected.
Yeah.
This is an unforeseen outcome.
That's going to be a great segment.
so we've got about a little bit of that. We have the death of journos.
Oh, no.
Not like literal
Not
death
literal.
of journos, but like the business.
I mean, they kill journalism. I can't wait till that.
So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then you got Mike Rogers, a great Senate candidate from the state of Michigan, which is, as we know, a huge point of opportunity for Republicans in 2024. It's a state that Donald Trump carried in 2016, narrowly lost in 2020, and it's an open seat for the first time in a long time.
An open seat where we're playing offense.
Yeah.
We love that. We love offense.
Yeah. So Mike Rogers is on that to talk about a wide-ranging interview. From what I understand, Michael, you conducted it.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Wide-ranging.
Well, the guy, you can just be like, education, and he just can give you, off the top of his head, 20 minutes. Like detailed stuff, a lot of like the guys.
Oh, he knows stuff? We hate that.
He knows a lot of stuff. And he's just really passionate about it. Like, I love the guy.
No, that's really great. That's really great to hear. And so you get a little bit of that. And we're going to endeavor to do all of that here through the course of the election cycle. I know we got very heavy in the presidential early on for obvious reasons. There was a heavy primary. But there are a lot of candidates you're going to get to know here over the next several months that are going to be make or break for the future of our country, regardless of whether the presidential works out, that you're going to have to pay attention to, and you're going to hear them differently here than you do anywhere else. So subscribe to the YouTube,
Absolutely.
by the way, so you can get a look at these folks.
And I love seeing the comments. It's like folks are like, I used to only listen to the show. Now I love throwing it on my TV and relaxing with the fellas. It's completely different. It's a whole new experience. If you have not yet, subscribe and enjoy it.
I prefer the audio medium, to be honest.
Do you?
Really?
For me, it's video.
I like,
For me,
I
it's
like
video.
audio.
I like the audio. I feel like it's
Well, outstanding work. Plug in the YouTube channel.
I feel like you look. I feel like you look better on audio. Frankly, Smug.
Oh, that's rude.
I'm
sorry.
fine with
I
that.
think
highly
you look
recommend-
so handsome.
I highly recommend the YouTube for everyone. Don't listen to these dinosaurs.
I'm kidding. It's a great medium.
Even
and
if
we
you're in your car, I don't care, bro. Throw it on the phone.
Distract yourself.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't do
Watch
that.
it while
One
you're
hand on
driving?
the wheel, one hand on the phone, bro.
No.
Enjoy the show. Have a good time with the fellas.
You're gonna get us shut down by like the FCC.
smoke cigarettes and drink bourbon while you're at it. That's fantastic. Everybody loves that. All right. Well, one reason that you want to subscribe to the YouTube is because you don't get the clips. Like you get the audio of the clips, but you don't get the video of the clip. We're going to introduce this next, the border fight here with clip 2. Spaghettis, what do we got?
President Biden again urged Congress to pass the deal, which he said would include the toughest set of reforms ever in our country to secure the border. But House Speaker Mike Johnson warns the deal brewing in the Senate is likely dead on arrival in his chamber. Some believe the Speaker and other House Republicans are blocking the deal to help Donald Trump win the presidential election. They're criticizing the move as political gamesmanship. Back at the border and way past deadline, Texas says it will not remove razor wire or grant federal agents access to a park along the Rio Grande.
Okay. That was a perfect clip pulled because you can see how the media portrays this argument, right? Here's the level setting. We have an absolute crisis going on at the border, so much so that it has bled way beyond the typical constituencies that are concerned about border security, well into the middle and into the left. And you've got mayors around the country that are dealing with an overflow of migrants. They don't know what to do with it. They're like, all of a sudden, this is a liberal issue in addition to a conservative issue that we've been blowing the whistle on for years. It's part of the reason why Donald Trump was elected in 2016, because he was talking about this and Democrats were not. And they continue to not. Biden was elected and reversed all of the progress immediately by executive order of everything that Donald Trump had done and put us in a situation where we're now incredibly vulnerable for all of this. So Biden believes that the best way out from this political conundrum that he's gotten himself into is for Congress to act. I mean, I've been around for 20 years, and every time an immigration debate comes up, there are great reasons not to do it, because any progress is less than perfect, and the politics of it have hewed the conservative way here for the last 10 or 15, no question about it. But as you look at what we're talking about here, it's gotten muddy in that I underestimated Biden, because I thought Biden was so concerned about his base constituency that he wouldn't even talk about it, that he would basically just kind of let Congress deal with it and support whatever and hope he could get out from underneath this rock. But what you saw in that clip is that they're now pushing Congress to act. Truth is, there are like 4 things that this guy could do with the stroke of a pen to reinstate a bunch of things that were done during the Trump administration that would do far more than this bill could do.
Yep, that's the truth.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
He's not going to do it.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting in the clip that Biden described this as like the toughest border bill in history. And it's like, no, all of those things that you undid, that was the toughest border deal in history. Everything Donald Trump did. And to call it political gamesmanship that Republicans might be backing off a bill that they don't like, was it political gamesmanship when you undid all of the things that were successfully securing our border because you were concerned about your base constituency? No, that was all well and good, but we're not going to point out the things you did got us into the crisis in the first place. No, now it's Republicans' fault.
Well, and that's better politics than I expected him to play on this issue, frankly. It's all politics. None of it has any relation to the truth, but it's better politics than I expected him to play because he's trying to get out from underneath this. Smug, what's your take?
I mean, I think when in that report, again, what they're trying to do is divide and conquer. Like when they bring up the Supreme Court thing, I think if folks missed it last week, you did a great job explaining the situation where the Supreme Court is essentially saying the border is the responsibility of the federal government, and the federal government, if it neglects to do their duty of protecting the sovereignty of this country, it's on them. But the responsibility falls on them, which when we have a Republican president, I mean, that's going to have wide-ranging implications where it's like, sanctuary city, huh? Well, that's not under the purview of a state or a city.
Right.
That's the federal government. And if we have a Republican, if we have Donald Trump as president, he'll be like, not happening.
Can't do it. Supreme Court precedent.
Bingo.
Sorry. So, but I don't blame the state of Texas because I would be doing exactly what Governor Abbott is doing.
Yeah.
By saying, if you're not doing your job, I'm going to, and you're going to have to force me not to.
Yep.
So what they're doing is absolutely what you should be doing in the dereliction of duty from the federal government and President Biden. Instead, President Biden is looking at like Chris Murphy of Connecticut to be like, hey, solve this in a legislative fashion.
And also, to the credit of Governor Abbott, we probably wouldn't even be having this discussion if it wasn't for the decision he made of why should Texas bear the brunt of open borders policy that the left wants? Let's send these illegal aliens to these cities that claim they're sanctuaries, that no individual is illegal.
Yeah.
And that has led to a sea change in political opinion where you go into these cities like New York City and the folks there are like, we're sick of it.
Yeah.
We're done. And they haven't dealt with a tenth of what Texas has had to go through.
100%. So, Smash, your view of where this bill sits.
So here's my thought. Since Joe Biden was sworn in as president of the United States, 8.5 million people have illegally come into this country. We've talked about it before. That is the same number of people who live in all 5 boroughs of New York City. That is a lot of people, okay? And the only way, the absolute only way we know to change it so that stops is to elect a different president in November. Because everybody, as said before, Joe Biden could stop this by signing 3 pieces of paper. He's not going to do it. The only way to actually stop the flow at the border is to elect somebody other than Joe Biden. But they would not, Donald Trump or whoever, would not take office until next January at the earliest, right? And so what are we going to do between now and then? If there's any way to slow the flow between now and then, I understand why people want to take it. I understand why the governor of Texas wants to take it, and I understand. Nick, actually, Spaghetti, don't we have some music supporting this governor of Texas? Oh.
Look at this.
The UT anthem.
Yes. Yeah. So Texas is standing up to the federal government.
They're
doing what they can to stop the flow of illegals coming into this country at the hand of Joe Biden. And I understand why senators are trying to do the same thing. Donald Trump, I think, is going to win on this issue, whether something passes the Senate or not.
That's not the song I expected at all. I thought it was going to be like, keep your rifle by your side or something like that.
Well, we got that for another episode.
Well, Wolf stole the board from him. I have no idea what it ultimately would have been had Wolf not stolen the board. If he had not, it would have been more provocative.
And again, I still am looking for an answer to my question. If you're, let's say, a farmer who has farmland near the border in Texas, and you see illegal aliens running across your fields, why are you not allowed to open fire? I don't get why that is not the case.
Dude, there is a terrible story. I don't know if you guys saw this story. There is a terrible story about a guy whose wife was murdered by people crossing the border, and he fought back, and he got some of them, and the cartels cleaned up the situation, and then that guy is the one charged. That guy is the one charged just because he was defending his property.
And what's going on in this country?
I mean, that's the problem.
Well, I just don't understand how that's a zero sum. I view that the same way as I view what we were talking about in foreign policy. You take an American life, it's over.
Right.
It's over. It's over. And you should have the full force of the federal government behind you.
Yep.
Whether it's on the border or whether it's in Jordan. If you take Americans out by absolute pure premeditated murder, you're going to get yours. And that's America at its best. When we were at our strongest, every single American fundamentally believed that.
Yeah.
That if you went anywhere in the country, if someone was going to try to kidnap an American or take an American, they were going to get fucked
And more importantly,
up.
every non-American believed that.
And they did. And that's why you went through a period of time where we didn't have this situation. But now you've got, kidnappings and you've got terrorist attacks and you've got border incursions and all this stuff.
This is the thing where you hear a lot of libertarians and people on the right on Twitter talking about, oh, we can't fight back in the Middle East. Look at what's happening at the border. Why can't we do both? Well, if somebody in the Middle East kills an American, why can't we shoot a missile at them? And if somebody at the border is killing Americans, why can't we declare war on the cartels?
Why can't we shoot a missile at them? I say mortars to the border, the Smug doctrine. There should be like a no man's land, because the thing is that like
there's an invasion.
It's an invasion. Create the no man's land. There's like 100 yards from the wall into Mexico where it's like it's raining mortars, bro.
Right. If you but if you're not
it's not a good idea to go near there.
If you're not allowed to walk through a city park at night, so cops can use that as a way to control bad people who are doing things they shouldn't be doing after dark, why can't you do the same thing around the border?
Yeah, listen, I agree. I agree with all of that. And I also think that there has never been a clearer choice between somebody like Donald Trump and somebody like Joe Biden on how you'd handle the border.
Right.
And I actually don't think that you can muddy this issue in the minds of most Americans.
I know. I just
don't think you can.
CBS can try as they might. Nobody believes them.
I just don't think they will ever believe them on that.
Yeah.
So the question that's happening before the Senate is whether or not and this is, let me back up. The reason this is a part of the conversation is that there were a bunch of very patriotic members of Congress who said, if we're going to do what you're asking for to provide for American interest abroad, whether it be Ukraine, Israel, or Taiwan, you're going to help secure this border first. They stood up and said that. Those same members, unfortunately, are the ones saying, how dare you make this a part of the conversation? And that is the kind of disconnect and, in my view, concerning competency that the Republican Party has been dealing with for a long time. If you're concerned about this, politics shouldn't enter the equation immediately. Like, you can think about it, no question about it, and our goal is to win politically. But what you're ultimately talking about is whether you give Joe Biden a talking point where he says the Republicans don't want us to do anything on the border unless they win an election is actually worse than what Democrats are trying to do to muddy the water. Because muddying the water here is like not that muddy. There's one guy who secured the damn border, made it the pinnacle of his campaign. Many would argue that it is A1A in terms of why he was elected in 2016. Certainly was a hardcore part of his 2020 campaign. Build the wall, make Mexico pay for it in 2016. Ultimately did Title, 42? Mm-hmm. Remain in Mexico, all these things that worked.
Right.
And this guy threw them all out, and now we have a problem.
Right.
That's not hard to understand. You underestimate the intelligence of the American people if you think that CBS News report not mentioning that component to it is going to confuse people. Like, it's just not. There is a huge difference of opinion on the border because there has been for 25 years.
Right. I guess, like, counterpoint, though, is like, why negotiate with a guy who's refusing to do the bare minimum that he could do with a stroke of a pen if it means we end up negotiating against ourselves and not getting the best deal we can? And I get the whole. That's it. I get the whole point of.
But
like,
what's the best deal we can? What are you talking about? Like, if Trump is elected? I mean, there's a lot of ifs and buts on that.
Well, and that's my second part of this, right? Like, yeah, I mean, in this we haven't actually seen everything here that was in this proposal or whatever, but I've read a lot about how there'd be threshold triggers with a certain number of illegal crossings in a day, and they could shut down the border in places that aren't ports of entry and stuff like that. All of that's very, very interesting. But like,
Why should we even have to hit the threshold? Is what gets me.
No, I guess what I'm saying
sure.
is like
Zero tolerance.
right?
It's not like we're gonna make a deal with this guy that. Well, okay. Once 5,000 people have
Right.
entered, beginning at midnight, what do you think that's gonna do? The whole incentive structure is gonna become to the coyotes. Get them there at 12:01 a.m.
I get
right? Like,
I
and
get
like
it,
you
I
said,
get
this
it.
guy is dealing. Biden is dealing in bad faith. The
Right.
guy can just do executive orders and take care of the problem.
But if it's something you can do in the meantime for like the next 8 months before you get like Donald
You're
Trump in
buying
there
time.
to do everything, it seems like at least it's something. I don't know.
This is the point I was making.
Yeah.
You know, the actual only way to fix the problem is to elect Trump over Biden. That's the only way to do it. But I always think about these guys who are down there on the border, who are working as Border Patrol agents, and they're overwhelmed.
They DM us every time we talk about border stuff. They always DM us and say thank you.
And Joe Biden calls them racist.
Yeah.
Right.
Gets them fired. Ruins their lives.
Yeah, and if there's anything that can be done to give them any kind of support whatsoever and to slow the flow at all, I think it's worth doing, because you know what I mean. 300,000 people a month are coming over the border. If you can slow it, if you can slow it by any amount, it's a good thing. And because you know that at the end of the day, Trump probably will win on this issue, and he will stop it.
Well,
but like, why do we have to take in 3 million more people between now and then?
And back to Holmes's point, though, it's like, yeah, you could do this deal and set up these triggers, and maybe Biden wouldn't follow some of the stuff, or obviously it's not going to solve the problem. But it's not like the American people are going to be like, well, now the Republicans are responsible too for this crisis at the border.
They're
Like,
just
you
not-
know, they're not. They know
not that
Donald
dumb.
Trump said, "I'm going to build the wall," and Joe Biden was like, "Come here, come on in, red carpet's here."
Said it
you know,
on camera.
So
like, I love that debate.
Yeah.
They're not going to win that debate. My biggest problem is, and I understand the political arguments. I understand like what you said was 100% true. Like 0 is the right number for that. So why negotiate against yourselves? I think the biggest problem is I see this playing out a lot like healthcare has for the Democrats over the years, where it's like they take incremental progress and move that bar. And like we are always waiting for the day where you have 60 votes in the Senate and 35, 40 seat majorities in the House. And it never comes. It has never come. Never come. And so the question is whether or not you reset the bar in a place where your political environment is good enough where Democrats are afraid of it, to a point where you can build on that progress rather than just always waiting for a sunny day that never comes. So, like, as I look at this, like, am I in love with this? No, not at all. But if you're trying to do, ultimately, Biden's going to get what he wants to get done on his side of the ledger, one way or another. Question is whether you make any progress on this or not. And I understand Donald Trump doesn't love it. I wouldn't love it either, because you don't want to, I mean, he doesn't have no responsibility for any of this. He can come in and do what he wants. He wants to campaign on it, and that's great. But if you're a conservative, the idea that you don't do anything ever on the board, and this dates back to like 2005.
Dude,
If you don't do anything, by the way, if they presented that 2005 bill to Donald Trump, he'd be ecstatic to sign it. But at that point, there were a lot of conservatives who were like, oh, it's not good enough. So he didn't do it. So, like, you got to figure out how to bridge a gap somewhere if you're a serious policymaker. This may not be it. This may not be the ultimate answer. But, like, wrap your head around incremental progress on some of these things, because it resets where your floor is to work off of when you ultimately have the opportunity to do more. That's my only point.
smart.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what. I think it basically comes down to the situation where I bet Biden and the Democrats are scared. This is going to be like, remember under Carter, you had Americans taken hostage by Iranians, and then on day one, Ronald Reagan brought them home. Day one, his first day in office, Americans are freed, and the Democrats have been traumatized by that.
Yeah.
Right, so they're
That's
like,
a good point.
we got to get some kind of a deal so we can say that we did something, or else day one Trump's going to roll up and the executive orders are going to fix that problem, and then everyone's going to know it was all on us.
It's true, and it's true on everything. But conservatives have to get a little bit better at recognizing environments and capabilities at the time. When it's coming your way and you have an opportunity for incremental progress to reset the floor, you got to take a serious look at it. Either that or you're going to be building off of the basement where you currently are. So anyway, you guys want to hear about some tigers?
Yes.
Always.
Dude, can we play this clip? This is Spagats. I'm curious to see what your editing is here. Oh boy, we have a warning. Okay, so for our audio only listeners, there is
You see a dog in the yard.
there's a dog in the yard.
Just do a normal dog. Is it snowing? It's bloody Russia.
I
Of
mean,
course
it's
snowing.
Russia. It's shitty all the time.
The dog hears something.
Dog's like, all right, I gotta look after this
Oh,
shack.
you see glowing
I can see
eyes
some
from the
eyes.
darkness, and it's a tiger. Bro,
And
did you just?
Oh my gosh, he
Oh,
edited out the
He
attack.
He edited it out.
Oh
He
no.
edited it. Yeah.
Show the attack, bro. Show it. Show it. Show it. The dog clearly got rocked.
Rocked.
Oh my
Now
God.
you got another camera angle of this tiger, and it is massive.
Look at the size of that thing.
Why would the dog try to go heads up on this one?
Is that a tiger or is it like a gargantuan lion? I mean, look at the size.
It's
Look
a
at the neck on that
That's
thing.
a beast.
Siberian tiger.
Honestly, you could ride this thing.
Wait, what?
This-
Oh boy, here it comes. Oh, it's doing the thing.
It sees a snack.
Yeah, here it goes.
Stalking.
It's stalking, and look at the.
Also, bro, how do you stalk when you weigh like 2,000 pounds?
Well, it's the snow. He's an expert. Wow. Now
Oh,
it's
there
there.
he is.
there
He
it
took
goes.
off, bro.
There it goes.
Remarkable.
Oh boy, there's a dog.
See, that dog knew.
Yeah.
That dog knew. Get the hell out of Dodge.
You know, it's actually remarkable the quick twitch of a tiger that size.
Yeah.
He's like an offensive lineman.
It's like a Barry Sanders
like,
type
just
thing, though.
get-
Totally.
Gets up.
It's like the new NFL. Like, you don't expect these massive players being that fast.
Yeah, like when you
that
see
dude just trucked. That tiger right there
you
just
know,
trucked.
when you see like a pulling guard like get downfield to make a block on a linebacker, and you're like, oh wow, he's got wheels.
Yeah.
Like that's what
Yeah,
I
who
when I
would've
saw
known?
that.
So the story from the Daily Mail is world's biggest cats go on a rampage in Russia, killing humans and eating dogs
Oh my
after
gosh.
Putin saved species from extinction. Oh, here we
What
go.
that's a wild story.
Here we go. Well,
That's a wild
Putin's fault.
Putin goes lefty, and there he goes. Tigers have gone on a rampage in Russia, killing people and dogs after Vladimir Putin saved the species from extinction. Giant Amur? How do we pronounce that?
Amur?
Amur.
Amur
tigers.
Let me just say,
An Amur tiger, considered the world's largest cat, are thought to be behind a series of attacks over the last year. Thought to be behind, and we just watched video of this shit.
You know what? Like, I don't want tigers to go extinct, okay?
but they're
I'm
not
gonna
going
preface it.
extinct. Have you been to the zoo? Tigers are at the
Well,
zoo.
that's- so
They're
here's the thing is,
absolutely not.
I-
There's a difference between extinct and in your neighborhood.
Sure.
Okay,
I get
you
that.
should kill tigers that
in the
are
zoo.
in your neighborhood.
In the zoo. So here's the thing: is I want a
It's
rug.
just simple
I
as
want
that.
I want a tiger rug. The tiger's not having a good time in the zoo. He doesn't want to sit in a concrete box. He wants to go hunt dogs. Right?
Right.
Let the dog hunting ones have their day. But
Right.
if you're already born in the zoo, if you're already in a concrete box, you don't know how to live. Be my rug. I will enjoy the hell out of that rug, dude.
You look nice in
and,
that,
And you know,
too.
there's always little tiger kittens born in the zoo. So after you get a new batch of those, you know, cut up the old ones. Let me have a rug.
Difference between
Let me have a rug.
in your extinction or in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a difference between those two things.
And let them fight them over there so we don't fight them here.
That's exactly right. Now, see, now you're getting on board.
Yeah.
That's the philosophy.
I mean, think how great it'd be to have a tiger rug, dude.
In December,
Great idea.
Victor S. was viciously mauled and killed in a region in eastern Russia while he was looking for a place where his dog had been killed.
Bro, that
Likely
tiger
by
got
the
a
same-
2-for-1.
Yeah.
I don't know what the gun control laws are in Russia, but
don't
if
think there's any
Victor
rules,
S
dude.
was walking around with a 460 Weatherby, he could have taken the tiger out, and the tiger would have been on his
I mean,
floor.
I'm pretty sure you can get an AK for like $5 in Russia. Dude. Like, there's like over 100 million of these globally.
They
Like,
got loose
they've popped
nukes.
those things
That
out.
surely they could figure that
Just
out.
roll out with an AK. But like the tiger is so smart because he's like, I'm gonna kill the dog. And I bet this is a dog person.
Yeah, bait.
And dog persons, they're the stupidest people
Oh,
out
come
there.
on.
They treat their dog like children. They're like, oh, they're called like my fur baby. This guy went out looking for his fur baby, and the tiger knew. And he waited.
Tiger
He
was
like,
actually
I bet this dumb fucker, I can eat this 20-pound dog, or I can wait for the 200-pound
gonna
dumbass to come looking for
We
him.
are going to get so many emails from the dog.
Outstanding
dog lover
work,
community.
tiger. 2 for 1.
Well, hold on. We got it.
You got the
Even
dog
goes, it
people.
goes further. Local fisherman Sergey He was seriously injured last year after a wild tiger jumped through his window and attacked him.
Yeah, bro,
he
there's no
survived
safety.
after the big cat was shot dead by his cousin. So they
Good.
do have weapons.
They're not bulletproof.
This comes after Putin supported the rehabilitation of the Amur tigers in its natural habitat in the east part of the country. Now the numbers of the endangered species have rapidly risen to over 750 in the wild. I mean, here
Real endangered.
here's the thing. Like 750, then not a big
That's not a big number.
not a big number. I can understand where we're concerned with the extinction. If T-Rexes actually inhabited planet Earth, we would make damn sure they were extinct.
No way, dude. I mean, well, you breed them
Yeah.
to hunt them. I don't want to finish them off because I would kill to shoot a T-Rex.
Well, you'd maybe have 4 or 5 of them running around at a time where you could
Like, you know, in
actually-
Texas, how you can, like, helicopter
Helihog.
the boars?
Yeah.
Imagine with T-Rexes, dude.
Yeah, but like that's what they'd be for, and you make
Yeah,
sure
that's
they're
what they'd be for.
fenced in. They wouldn't be roaming around your neighborhood.
They always try fencing the T-Rex, dude. We know how that ends.
I mean, Jurassic Park did a decent job in a
I
documentary.
think the story here,
fashion
I mean, like, this
on
is
that.
such an absurd take of, like, oh, well, Putin is to blame for
Yeah.
the tiger coming back. It's like, okay, honestly, if you live in an area where dogs and people are getting rocked by tigers, if you don't leave your house with an AK, you've got what you got coming to you.
So I actually agree with you, Smug, because I was thinking about how remote this area would have to be for like these tigers to just be running wild and
Yeah.
stuff. And like, think about it. Like, if you're in super remote, like Saskatchewan or Alaska, and there's bears and stuff, and bears will sometimes attack a big grizzly or something. Like, we don't really blame the grizzly like that. It really is their domain. Do you know like how, like where this
Are you
region?
kidding? You don't blame the grizzly? I do have a friend who was camping.
Okay.
And a bear attacked their trash. And thank God he had a 10-gauge slug on him.
Okay.
And he took care of the bear. And now he's got a
So
bear
he
rug.
He's got a rug?
So he went
got a rug.
camping into the wild domain, and he had trash out.
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
You're blaming
it's his,
the bear.
It's his fault.
Well, I'm just saying.
He's
also, like,
he's just trying to enjoy nature.
Hold on. Let me
for
finish my
crying
point.
out
Let me
loud.
finish my point here. I looked up the area of Russia that these attacks
Is
happen
it
in.
fairly remote?
It's like east of Mongolia, dude.
Is
this
it
is
really?
this is like the craziest land on planet Earth. It's like the Russia that Russia claims that really is just like
No man's land.
a wasteland.
So here's the thing with that is like
Genghis
we're
Khan
only
thought it was
talking.
pretty
I don't know, dude,
inhabitable.
We're talking about a downside.
No,
Like
Genghis Khan went south,
But they
He's-
have- they-
he's like, this
they've got-
place sucks.
they've got-
I gotta take the entire horde east and south.
listen,
they have
these people live here, and we're supposed to feel bad that like a tiger rocked his dog. When this guy, I'll tell you right now, he bags a tiger, I'll pay him twice his yearly salary for that body. Get it through the southern border.
Get it through the southern border. See if you
You'll get-
coyote that thing into my rug.
You know, $500 is like generational wealth when you're living east of Mongolia, bro. Like, I got you covered. Bring it through the southern
Do
border.
you remember the coat? Do you remember the coat that Smug had that he wore when he was
If
in
I
Iowa?
could have a tiger coat,
like
dude.
with the fur line.
If you could get tiger.
If you could replace the fur line of your white parka
I'd be like, this is pure tiger, baby.
with Siberian tiger, I mean, that's a showstopper.
Hell yeah.
Showstopper.
Russia, if you're listening, I will pay top dollar for a dead tiger.
God, I love that. All right, so what we traditionally do at the top of the show is discuss like things that concern us that have nothing to do with politics. We're all big football fans here. We watched the championship games, some with more delight than others. None of our teams were playing. We got our asses kicked early.
Yeah.
In fact, none of them were playoff teams this year.
Yeah, it's actually kind of remarkable that we went 0 for 4 on
Statistically.
just making the playoffs.
I mean, just so bad. So bad. But there was a contingent of Lion faithful here who'd like to see a horrible franchise come up from their horribleness to make it to a Super Bowl. I was not amongst them. And I was delighted to see a 24-7 lead in an offense seemingly capable of moving down the field at any point,
Yeah.
managed to make a series of decisions that ended up into a playoff loss and give their fans the kind of heartburn that I have experienced all of my life.
Yeah, but like, why
I'm
kick?
so happy with the
why kick them when they're down? They've had it just as terrible, if not worse, than you.
No, because it's fun, dude. Like that's the purpose of Detroit. It's people
purpose of
and the
Detroit.
city itself,
Okay.
beyond the team.
Hold on.
Detroit's always like, well, at least you can have the worst day of your life and be like, at least I'm not in
I
Detroit.
wish-
Hold
I
on,
wish-
we
at
have
least I'm
Mike
not in Detroit,
Rogers
bro.
on today.
I wish Mike Rogers was still here to defend Michigan from you.
You know,
hoodlums.
it's like you can always be
the
like,
purpose.
at least I can still look down on Detroit. At least I can still look down on the fans of Detroit, the people of Detroit. No matter what happens, at least I'm not in Detroit. And so when they lose and you see all their fans online being like, no, it's happening again, it's so funny, dude. It makes me feel great. I was like, I hope they get like the touchdown like near the end to get their hopes up. Because like the favorite pastime of people in Detroit is getting their hopes just lit on fire. Dude. Like they live for this.
Well, I
So
have
let
a-
them have what they
I have a
want. And we can all
slightly-
enjoy the bonfire too.
I have a slightly different take in that I actually love a Michigander. I've got a lot of friends from Michigan. I love, like, the people there are just salt of the earth. They're terrific people. But as an NFL fan, I think I have a unique situation where I'm constantly dashed from any hopes that I've ever had my entire life.
As a Vikings fan.
As a Vikings fan,
Yes.
we have had some incredible, like the highest scoring team in the history of the regular season. We've had Hall of Famers one after another.
Yeah, Dante Culpepper and Chris Carter and Randy Moss on
all
the
the
field
same
at the same time.
team. All on the
Crazy.
same team. And like all of this stuff, and Adrian Peterson we mixed in later, and we had, it always ends the same way in previously inconceivable pain. To watch a team go from like 40 years of absolute destitution, the idea that they would go from that to being in the Super Bowl was more than I could bear.
Yeah, because if you're miserable, you got to drag them down to your misery as well.
100%. I
Basically.
wish it was more
Well,
complicated
that's
than
just,
that.
but like for America,
You've won a Super Bowl, Michael.
no, but I'm saying for America, you got to understand why they would be behind the line.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
not-
dude,
I'm not-
no.
I just gave you my full defense.
This,
No,
is, this is America.
I
Winners
get
win,
it.
losers lose. That's the way we've worked. That's why we're the greatest country on earth. Winners win, losers lose. They
Not-
lost.
not
They're
a lot-
losers.
not a lot-
They did what they always do, and they lost.
Not
You
a
know,
lot-
the winner wins the game, and it wasn't Detroit as usual, dude.
Not a lot of winning.
It's not participation award. The Lombardi Trophy is not participation. This time, guys, let's let Detroit have it. You know,
Well, that's basically what they did to the New Orleans Saints in 2009, by the way. Just they gave them a participation trophy for the hardship that they had during Katrina.
Okay, so now that we did Holmes's whole wind up here, Lions obviously lost.
Yes.
49ers, good for them. Stacked offense. Be cool to see them in the Super Bowl. But meh, I think America was pretty much behind the Lions.
You know what the thing is? What makes me sad about seeing the Niners win is you're essentially seeing like the Denver Broncos next generation responsible for all of this. You see the son of Ed McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey, powering that offense. You see the son of our head coach, Mike Shanahan, running that team, and the general manager, John Lynch, who used to be a defensive back for the Broncos.
Yeah.
All that talent. I mean, the
done
Broncos
this.
just squander it.
You've done
They're
this.
like, send our best out.
You have
Bring
done
in
this.
Russell Wilson. We don't need championship caliber people here. Bring us mediocrity.
I didn't realize that so many bad decisions. Denver's going to be applying for reparations, NFL reparations.
It's
at some point.
unbelievable. Like when I was seeing the celebration afterwards, and I was like, "That's Broncos family.
These are all
That's
our
Broncos
guys."
family. That's Broncos family.
Yeah.
We just mortgaged our future to bring like this loser squad that we have."
Pretty soon Elway is
Well,
going to be
you-
running quarterbacks.
You mortgaged your future on a team that lost to the Cincinnati Bengals 31-17.
Well, have you guys actually?
I
wait,
think-
no, Boomer won a Super Bowl, right?
We've never won a Super Bowl.
Oh, shit, damn!
no,
not
no
even
Super
Boomer.
Bowls.
And I think I think
And we both have Super Bowls with Peyton Manning. And you guys
Yeah.
have nothing.
Should have gotten Peyton, dude. It's a good pick.
You bastards.
He wins. Winners win.
But I think I think the other
the Niners probably go down to the Chiefs. I think.
Yeah. Well,
Nobody's ever gotten rich betting against Pat Mahomes.
Yeah.
Let me just say that. I mean, that
how
guy.
crazy is the statistic that every year he's been in the league, he's played in the AFC Championship? That's insane.
It's completely
That's insane.
nuts.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
It's wild.
He did lose one of those games.
Sure,
did.
but he's always going to the gym. It's like he's always goes to the conference championship.
How'd that end up, by the way?
The Bengals went to the Super Bowl. The Chiefs did not.
Well,
They
if
got
you
rocked,
win an
right?
AFC championship, you generally go
Yeah.
What's it? I always forget the name of your quarterback who thinks he's Vanilla Ice. Like he shows up thinking he's yeah. He like showed up to the Super Bowl wearing like a chain and these shades, thinking he was like this shit. And they got rocked.
Remember when your quarterback threw fewer touchdowns than millions of dollars he was paid? In the season?
Of course, dude. That's Russell Wilson's job.
You know what I love about us and this show is we were supposed to be talking about the NFC and the AFC Championship, and it just became personal grievance on all of our
It's
fandoms.
grievance politics, but football.
Yes. And you all understand it. You're listening and you understand it because you got your teams too, and it came up short.
So what did we think actually about the Chiefs-Ravens game?
I want the Chiefs.
I think Lamar Jackson should have run more. If he would have run, he had the room. He could have run. If he would have run, he would have kept that secondary honest, and he would have had more.
The number of times I was shouting at the TV in the fourth quarter of that game, his offensive line was doing their job.
They were doing the
job. He had like 30 to 40 seconds.
He was trying to pocket
He's checking
pass.
every receiver twice, and it's like, bro, check a couple receivers and take off. You got legs.
Yeah.
You got wheels. You can move.
I think.
What are you doing?
I think the greatest throw he had in the game was the tip ball that he caught himself and got a first down.
Yeah,
it's absolutely
that
incredible.
was incredible.
It was like
play.
the most athletic thing I've ever seen.
No question about it.
And this is a team that rocked the Niners a couple weeks back, like dismantled the Niners. It's I've seen a lot of memes online. It's like Lamar Jackson in the regular season is like unstoppable, and then you get into the playoffs and the dude's just beat to hell. Like that's a curse on this guy.
Yeah. Although I will also say that I think the NFL, all things considered, with the Jim Harbaugh win in the national championship, John Harbaugh, if he goes to the Super Bowl, like it threatens the Taylor Swifting of what they've come up with.
Oh,
here
the script
as the script, and so I feel like this was a preordained situation.
There were some bad calls.
Sure.
I feel like
the Wigs.
The Ravens
big wigs were out?
They
The
did
big
not
wigs
get
in New
nearly
York.
as many calls as Mahomes got. But that's the way it always goes with the Chiefs. They get everything they want.
I don't know. The Chiefs also had like a touchdown called back and stuff. I don't know. I didn't think it was as bad. I've seen a lot of Chiefs victories where I feel like the Zebras really had it.
Couple
for 'em.
were very personal this year.
This one didn't seem that. I mean, their defense showed up.
No,
the
they
Chiefs'
looked like
defense showed up. If you would have told me before the game that the Chiefs won against the Ravens on the road by scoring 17 points, I would never believe it.
Did you see? So did you see that online? This video is getting posted a bunch of the game where the camera went. Of course, as every NFL game for the Chiefs does now, is it goes to the like owner's box and you see Taylor Swift, and then she says, "I don't want the camera on me." And they cut the they move the shot. So like she's legit directing the game now.
Do you think she's wired in? Do you think she had like
Dude, she's not. That's the thing is like the employees are wired in. She's just sending out the command.
Wow.
I'm not.
It was amazing to see
I'm
that.
not looking forward to the next 2 weeks of Taylor Swift commentary. Let me just tell you.
I think so. I was like,
Not.
They're
good with
doing this to juice the numbers for the Super Bowl, but apparently she's got like a concert in Japan or something.
How do you juice the numbers for a Super Bowl?
You
It's
can't.
like routinely the single
Right.
one watch
Because they
thing.
want what they're getting is like, so women's jersey sales have gone through the roof. That's what they want. And you know what? Good for them. Good
we
for
have
them.
so little. We have so little.
Let them. So I think it's also fun to be mean online to Taylor Swift fans. So I like it, dude. It's another outlet to be mean to people.
Well, maybe we can hope. To sort of channel my inner Josh Holmes here, is that the Taylor Swift fans like get their hopes up. That they just started
where he's
watching
going
football.
here.
They
Yeah.
just started watching football 6 weeks ago, and they're like, "We're gonna win the Super Bowl."
And then they
Maybe their hopes will be
Dash.
dashed.
I saw something online. Is it fake news? Did they say that like they came out, Kelsey and Taylor Swift came out as a couple in December? Has it only been December?
No, it's been longer than that.
Yeah, because it feels like it's been like 10 years to me.
It's got to have been longer than that. Jesus, it feels like
Yeah.
it's a lifetime already.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fair point. Duncan.
Hopefully.
I like that.
So
All
we're
right.
all 49ers fans.
Yeah, no question. All right, so last piece of business is the end of a business. Which it seems more real now that it, like we've complained about fake news for a long time, and it just seems like there's a whole lot of Americans and now internationally that have just stopped trusting the news business, stop reading it, stop doing whatever. I think a lack of information flow is not great, but like a lack of specific information flow I can get behind. Anyway, News media, this is according to the Press Gazette. What's the Press Gazette?
Sounds like a place that needs some layoffs.
It's in the UK. That news media job cuts 2024 tracked. Year starts with at least 650 redundancies.
Not enough.
Crikey.
Big losses at LA Times, Sports Illustrated, some outfit in Ireland. And then you've got Politico that writes about this, saying journalists across the country burst into flames of panic this week as bad news for the news business crested and erupted everywhere all at once. Patrick Soon-Shiong, a billionaire publisher of the Los Angeles Times, laid off 20% of his newsroom. Over at Time Magazine, its billionaire owner Mark and Lynn Binoff.
Terrible guy. He's an awful guy. He's a real bad guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
They did the same with 15% of their unionized editorial employees, which could give you a good indication.
Can I make one quick observation, regardless of what you think of either of these guys?
Are you going to defend them?
They're both
Yep,
billionaires.
as journal buddies. That's it. He's my journal
Oh
buddies.
no, I think he's going to attack the billionaires.
Just listen to what I'm
There
saying.
he goes.
Okay.
Defending his journal buddies.
These people are both billionaires, so ostensibly they're liquid enough to be able to fund another year of this.
And they chose
they're
not to.
choosing not to.
Yeah. Ah,
And that hurts
is
your feelings because you're like, my journal buddies.
And that hurts you.
Okay.
I mean, unbelievable. The latest conflagration is ignited at Sports Illustrated the previous week as catastrophic layoffs were dispensed via email to most staffers. Business Insider, whose parent company, Axel Springer, they also own Politico, by
Who
the
did this
way,
article?
who's doing this article, jettisoned 8% of its staff, while workers at Condé Nast, Forbes, and New York Daily News and elsewhere walked out to protest forthcoming cuts.
I got a question for you guys. If you know that people are getting cut left and right in your industry, are you going to walk out to protest, or are you going to try to write
If you're
three
a
or
dumb
four
journal,
extra
you will.
articles?
If you're a dumb journal, you will.
Just try to
Isn't
write
it a
something?
perfect encapsulation? It's like, geez, I really could try to crank something harder and get beyond that. Or, you know what? Yeah, give me the sign.
Yeah. I didn't lose my job, so clearly they value me a little more than those other people. You know what? I'm going to make myself useless too.
Give me the sign.
I heard some really funny, or really great analysis of this over on Pirate Wires. Mike Solana, friend of the program's publication, they had a discussion about this, and one of his writers over there pointed out that, like, if you are by like NLRB laws, if you are a union member and you're out like picketing, doing a walkout like this, you technically can't get fired. So like,
so that's
if
the
they
thing?
just
It's like-
indefinitely strike,
smarter than it
they're
thinks.
like, I don't have to worry about Cobra. I know I have health insurance as long as I'm standing next to this inflatable rat in front of the
Oh,
building.
okay. Okay, so that's why they're striking.
Which is hilarious. Hilarious.
Maybe it makes more sense. So the Washington Post, NPR, Vice, Fox, NBC News, Texas Tribune, Barstool Sports, companies who have axed huge swaths of the staff. I'm going to put Barstool in an entirely separate category.
Yes, agreed.
Because Dave Portnoy bought his company back for $1.
Yeah.
And unlike the previous management has tried to make this back into what it was before he sold it in the first place, obviously got to rejigger some things. So that's in a very different situation than the rest of this stuff. But the rest of this stuff, BuzzFeed News is dead.
BuzzFeed News is dead. See you in hell.
I'll tell you one brand that hasn't been called out here, the Wall Street Journal. And I think it's because...
is it because they report news?
Yes. I think that when people open a paper, they want information. For the same reason they type in weather.com. They want information.
Yep.
You open a newspaper, you don't want to hear somebody else's politics. You already know your politics. You just want to know what's going on in the world.
This was a really good point that was being made in this discussion is the New York Times recently reported their quarterly profits. They're doing great. They're making a lot of money. Wall Street Journal, they're doing great. This example was brought up again on Pirate Wires, where the LA Times has a section that they've devoted just for Latinx. They call it it's some name for Latinx section, and the cover story this week was why saying that tortillas are not nutritious is white supremacy. Okay,
Yeah.
the entire segment got laid off, right? And here's the thing: is who is reading this section? It's
Yeah.
not bringing in any revenue to the paper. That's not information. You don't wake up in the morning, you throw on your robe, you walk to the yard, you grab the paper, and you're like, tortillas being attacked, that's white supremacy. Totally wanted to read that this morning. That's information news you can use 100%.
I bet they looked into the analytics on who actually reads those stories, and they're like, "There's not a single Latino that reads this. It's all angry woke white women who like want to feel bad about
Here's
themselves."
The thing, the only person who reads that is the guy who wrote it and like 3 of his buddies.
Yeah,
that's it. And like, if you are a journo and the pitches that you're throwing out there and the articles that you're writing are like, you know what? Me and my journal buddies were talking about this when we were grabbing drinks the other day. That's not anything anyone wants to read. Chances are that's left for your discussion at the bar when you're all wasted to be able to think that attacking tortillas is white supremacy.
Yeah.
Because what people want is actual information. Like Bloomberg makes a ton of money.
Yeah.
Because they give you information to trade your stocks on. Wall Street Journal, they have to have quick, accurate information because people are trading stocks when they're reading that.
So we started this show as we were talking about, that attack by those militias backed by Iran of this idea of mission creep. Like, I feel like media has gone into this mission creep.
Great comparison.
And a lot of it was funded during low interest rates where these billionaires who owned it could like afford the luxury of indulging the woke idiots who work at these places who wanted to talk about how tortillas are racist.
And the next thing you know, you got Taylor Lorenz on staff, and you're like, Jesus, I actually have to deal with that?
But now the media industry is sort of contracting, and the first to go is all of this sort of these luxury things that they thought. And we've seen this also with like entertainment. Like Netflix, for example, has reoriented its business model and what content it's producing because of the same sort of phenomenon.
And Disney, too. Like that last superhero movies of theirs bombed. It was just 2 hours of woke bullshit, bombed to hell.
I think there was one other thing real quick that I think I really, when the history books are written about this period of time and the contraction in media, I think the history books are going to look at this one moment, and that is when Comfortably Smug went to Iowa and did the job of the journos better than them.
That was it. That was the line drawn in the sand.
That was the inflection point in our history.
It was,
turns out it's not as tough as they made it out.
Yeah. The thing is that provide information that people need.
Yeah.
Information that's important to them. And you know what? They'll tune in.
Yeah.
What a radical idea. And for all these journos, if you're scared about losing your job, just listen to me real quick. I hope you do. And here's why. Because I want you to write another one of these articles about how the American people are idiots for not seeing how good the Biden economy is. All of you losing your jobs, write one more article. Put it on a Substack. Maybe you'll make some money for a change. Throw it on Substack and say, why are the American people so dumb? The Biden economy is great. Is the Biden economy great? I hope all of you lose your jobs, no matter how much Ashbrook cries, no matter how many tears he sheds over these journals. I don't. I get happier every time I read it because these people have lied to the public. They've turned news publications, which were the bedrock of information that you'd get in this country, into their personal playground of woke bullshit. And this is what they get. All of you should lose your jobs. You're all criminals.
Smash, do you have any rejoinder, or are you just going to let that lie?
He's like, my poor journal buddy.
Just going to leave that where
He's
it is.
speechless.
All right, so I think now is the time to get to our interview. We profusely apologize to the good people of Michigan who are tuning in to listen to the next senator from the great state of Michigan, but it's a good interview, so let's get to it.
I want to welcome to the program, great friend of the program, a former congressman and current candidate for United States Senate in Michigan. Mike Rogers, how are you?
I am doing fantastic. How about you? This is quite a setup you have here. I'm very impressed.
I appreciate it.
You went from the basement with like water dripping down to
and Zoom. And now we're like professionals.
Look at this.
Who would have
thought?
thought?
Like a real studio.
I know. It used to be like the side hobby, and now it's the main gig.
I kind of like it.
Yeah.
None of this does anything, does it? It's just really all
it's just for the visual. Yeah,
like,
right. So you've come today to see us, and you've brought a fantastic gift. Let's get right to that at the top of the show here.
You're going to need this.
Okay.
Or more aptly, you're going to want this. This is Traverse City whiskey. It is distilled in the north of Michigan, in Traverse City, and you're going to like it. It's smoother than you would think, not being Tennessee whiskey. But you're going to really enjoy this.
Oh, let me check that out.
Yeah,
that's great. Barrel proof. I love that.
Okay. So just so you know, I'm not giving you something that you wouldn't get from anyone else or somebody that didn't care for you. I gave that to my sister-in-law, and she's a pretty tough lady, and so I would only give her the best.
That's great. See, I know Traverse City as a place for fudge, or maybe cherries. But now whiskey. They're doing a lot. They actually make some really interesting white wines up that way. Oh, wow. Really?
The red wines, well, let's just say the white wines are pretty good.
Oh, I love it. And if just a quick plug for Traverse City, if you ever get a chance to go up there into Michigan during the summer and August months, Pure Michigan. It's a fantastic place.
Oh, it's fantastic. Actually, Traverse City was my mother's favorite city in the world. If you told her you can go anywhere in the world, she would go to Traverse City.
Wow.
In the summer, mind you. But you can't get any more beautiful views. And the downtown is pretty special.
Yeah.
The beaches are fantastic. You would think you're on the Caribbean when you're up there in the summertime. The water coloring is just gorgeous. It is spectacular.
And there's like no humidity, and there's lots of putt-putt golf around.
I love mini
Pirates
golf.
Cove. Come on. I have family in Michigan, so I've been up there many times.
Yeah, and
as you can tell.
actually that's the only golf I can do. Is mini golf, and I love it.
It's the best. So enough about Traverse City. Let's get into you, because that's why you're here. And you have a really incredible background. Law enforcement, Congress, and now running for the United States Senate. Can you tell us a little bit about your life before politics?
So yeah, I had the good fortune. I went to a very small school in Michigan called Adrian College. They didn't have an ROTC program, so I enrolled in ROTC at University of Michigan.
Nice.
And so I did my military science from University of Michigan. So when I graduated, I was commissioned a second lieutenant in the United States Army, and I got to go off and serve in California. I was at Fort Ord. I was an ordnance officer in the 7th Infantry Division, which was really a spectacular experience for me. I had always wanted to be an FBI agent. When I was a sophomore in high school, they have back then, I don't know if they still do this, but they had these pamphlets in a kind of a wire thing, like a bookcase kind of thing, and it had all the different kind of jobs you could do. And I was looking through it, and nothing struck my fancy. And I noticed that one had fallen behind the table, and I reached down and picked it up, and it was, become an FBI agent. I read that thing and said, "Yep, I'm in."
Wow.
So I really wanted to do that. Even before I went in the military, I knew that I wanted to be an FBI guy. So applied for and was fortunate enough to be accepted to an agent class and became an FBI agent. There's two things I wanted to do. I wanted to chase Soviets. Back then, the Soviet spies were all over America, or work organized crime, and I got sent to Chicago to work organized crime. So I was, I can't believe they paid me to do it, honestly.
Wow.
It was great work.
Yeah, I bet. So then you run for the House of Representatives, and you get there, and you're chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. What was that like, going from being in the FBI to being in Congress and seeing that side of our politics?
So I joke that I went from being on a Friday behind the bushes taking people's pictures to a candidate for office on a Monday in front of the bushes getting my picture taken. It was quite a switch for me. Matter of fact, true story, I was out, and again, I didn't really know what I was doing politically. I mean, I knew why I wanted to run. I knew all of that. I knew I was determined to serve. And so I'm driving by in a kind of a rural part of my district, and there's a farmer working on his tractor. And it's a hot August day at a primary at this point. And I'm like, I have got to work up the courage to go and talk to this guy and see if I could put up one of those big, obnoxious 4x8 campaign signs. So I think about it, and I went, okay, I'm going back. So I turn around, and I go back, and I climb over the fence. And he's, a seasoned citizen, mopping his brow, been in agriculture. You could tell his whole life, the rough hands, he's been working outside his whole life. And so I go into my banter, nervously talking to him. I'm telling him who I am and blah, blah, blah. And I stop, and he says, and I go, well, sir, I was wondering if I could get your support. And he says, well, you seem like a nice enough young man, honest and trustworthy, and FBI, and you served your country in the Army. Honest and trustworthy. And I said, great, I can count on your support. And he said, nope. And I said, "Sir, didn't you just say I was honest and trustworthy?" And he said, yep. And I want to keep you that way, too. So I climbed back over the fence. He ended up letting me have the sign eventually. But I thought, my God, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Cashing in a credible profession for this. But I found it every bit of as challenging in just different ways. And I loved every bit of it because you could actually proactively do some good things. When I was in the state legislature, I started the 529 plans that many people know and take for granted today, where you can put money in tax-free for your child's college education, and your grandparents can put money in tax-free. That was a fairly big deal back then at the time. I also did some legislation. It was just when the computers were kind of hitting their stride and realized that it was illegal for law enforcement to pose as a 14-year-old if you're trying to fish for adult trying to find
catch a predator.
Yeah. And so I changed that law as well. And so I found that you could actually do things. You sit down, you work at it, you understand where we're trying to go and how you can help your community and families. And so I really loved all of it. And that was the state legislature. And then in 2000, closest race in the country, I ran for the U.S. Congress. Debbie Stabenow, the current Michigan U.S. Senator who's retiring, was running for the House. I really had an interest in those national, international issues. And we got out there and ran. People said, "I'm nuts. You can't win. It's not winnable. Don't waste our time." The good news is I think I was not smart enough to know you can lose back then. And I just got at it. And we ended up winning the closest race in the country that year by 111 votes.
Wow.
And that shows the flavor of Michigan. They will split their votes if they like the candidate. And so I find it ironic that, first of all, went through and became the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. It was an amazing opportunity. All 17 intelligence agencies, about $78 billion. And I got to oversee all of it, including the covert action oversight. And, as a former FBI guy, military guy, this was, a dream come true. You get to actually be a part of getting it right for the country at a really difficult time. We were in Afghanistan and we were in Iraq, and we had, China was starting to rattle its saber back then, and Russia was still up to no good. Yeah. So we had all of that kind of going on. And I was, right in the thick of it. Matter of fact, this is an important point for me, if I may. Everyone says you can't do things when you get there, and it's really important to understand that's not true. You got to throw the horse bucky flag. They said you can't cut that budget because we're in the middle of a war, and that $78 billion can't spare a dime of it. So with my Democrat colleague, actually, at the time, we went through the budget, and I said, I bet we can find waste in here. We ended up cutting out of that budget at the height of the war almost 10% of that budget, $7.5 billion.
Wow.
And it was just wasteful. No muscle, no bone. I was very adamant that we were not going to take resources away from agents in the field and officers in the field, and that would impact our soldiers' ability to protect themselves. And we didn't. It just shows you that this can be done, and that's one of the reasons I decided to come back at this. This thing is so broken, so off track. Everybody's in their corners, nothing getting done.
So let's get to that.
Yeah.
So your life's work is things like the military, law enforcement, intelligence. What do you see in your experience that we're failing at today in law and order and intelligence?
Well, I would argue leadership and consequences. In the law enforcement, you cannot make it easy for people to steal and wonder why people steal. I mean, it seems very basic, but it's happening all over the country.
Right.
You tell them, hey, you can steal up to $1,000. Guess what they're going to steal? $999.99.
Yeah.
Right? They're pretty clever. And sometimes they'll go over hoping that you don't count. Right. And that's the problem. That's the consequence, the missing piece on the consequence. And we're seeing that all over the country. That's why car thefts are up, and there's a whole host of crimes across Michigan that we worry about. On the border is another great example. Come on up. We'll give you a hotel. We'll give you a credit card. We'll give you a very nice hotel and 3 meals a day, and welcome. And we'll figure it out later. Well, guess what? People are going to run to that southern border and cross it, which has been the absolute disaster that you see today. No consequences for breaking the law for coming here illegally. The military is a leadership problem for me. if you look at the fact that we can't get, we are failing to recruit the folks for the Navy, the Air Force. I love the Marines because they missed their numbers. They just lowered their numbers. That's why I love the Marines. But the Army, we failed to get 15,000 recruits last year. That's an entire Army division, right? That's not sustainable. The Navy had to lower their standards on their academic test that you take to get in.
Yeah.
Just this, like last week, they're lowered it. You can get less than 50 on their test, and they're now considering taking you. They wouldn't do that before. So that's a combination of, I think, military leaders and political leadership. We need people to understand how important it is to serve your country at a time when I can't think of a more important time to have the world's strongest Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. And you have that, by the way, so you don't have to use them.
Right.
When people think we're weak, guess what? They're going to challenge us. Yeah. So that's a leadership problem. It's a consequence problem on both of those things. And I think there's really very strong solutions to fix both of those problems.
So speaking of tests, I know you've done a ton of work in education. You mentioned earlier the 527 that you worked on when you were in the Michigan State Legislature. 529. 529, excuse me.
That's right. You cut me off by 2.
You know, Michigan, and there's a lot of states that are like this, dealing with a lot of issues with literacy rates and whatnot. You know, what do we do to combat that?
Yeah. So again, consequences. We have to have consequences. Schools have no consequences. They just keep failing these kids up. And some people say, well, it's the teacher's fault. Well, imagine if you're a 6th grade teacher and you have a 5th grader who gets promoted up that's not reading at the 4th grade level. How is a 6th grade teacher supposed to teach the 6th grade? Right? You learn to read to the 3rd grade. You read to learn after the 3rd grade. So every year we fail those kids, we are sentencing them to a life of poverty, welfare, prison, something worse.
Yeah, it's a compounding.
It's absolutely a compounding thing. Yeah. So here's the way I would do it. I would say, and by the way, we have an adult literacy problem. Over half of all adults don't read past the 6th grade level. We're graduating 57% of our high school seniors last year couldn't read at the 6th grade level, right? So China, I think this is our strategic competitor. They say they're going to beat us economically and militarily. They're teaching quantum mechanics in the 8th grade. Our 8th graders can't read, you know, at the 5th and 6th grade level.
Geez.
I mean, this is a huge, huge problem. And by the way, our military recruiting, the number one reason that they had to turn these folks away that wanted to serve, they couldn't read well enough to pass the test. So you start thinking about what this means for us in our future. I think it's an epidemic, and here's the good news. We can do something about it. So here's the way I would handle it. If you're on welfare, the odds are you're reading somewhere between the 4th and 6th grade level, right? So you're one of those kids that the schools failed. They passed you up and said, it's okay, now you're an 8th grader, even though you're not performing like an 8th grader or a 9th or 10th or 11th or 12th. And so I would ask them, say, listen, we want to get you the help that you need. We are a big and gracious and generous country as we should be, but we're going to ask you to help yourself a little bit. You're going to go through a reading reclamation program. In 6 to 14 weeks, they can get you reading at grade level, which would fundamentally change the lives of everybody that goes through this program. And my argument is this is the time to do that. We're not asking them to go to go get a college degree or go back to high school. We're saying 4 to 6 weeks, it's an hour a day, 5 days a week. We can get you reading at a place where you can up your skills, you can get a job, you can fill out an application. I mean, think about the fact how many people the government had to hire to help people apply for COVID benefits because they couldn't read the applications.
Yeah.
I mean, think about what we've done to ourselves. So that's one way I think we get at it. The other way is if you want to get out early of prison, you have to go through a reading reclamation program. I don't care if it's a day or an hour. You have to go through a reading reclamation program to get you back to reading at grade level. At least give yourself an opportunity to fill out an application to get a job. Otherwise, you're going right back into crime. And as a guy that put people in prison, you don't want them to come back. The whole goal isn't to bury the key. Well, let me back up. There are some people that need the key need to be buried. A lot of these prisoners can, with a little bit of skills, try to get back out in the workplace. We ought to try to help them do that. And so both of those to me are really important. The last one is, here's how we put pressure on schools. Title I money is in the 3rd grade for underperforming schools. They basically take a test on reading, and they get it back about a year later. Well, if you're not reading in the 3rd grade, now you're graduating the 4th grade.
Right.
Guess what? We have compounded the problem.
Right.
Only in American education system would this be allowed to happen. And so what I would argue is, well, digitize those tests so that we get 2 weeks back.
Right.
Put the schools on a remediation program on how to get those kids reading and how to get the school teaching those kids to read. And if they don't perform, take a pro rata amount of that Title I money, marry it up with whatever state school choice money they have, and let those parents make decisions for those kids so that they can get an education. Remember, you're not helping a kid by promoting him. You know, some say, well, it hurts their feelings. I'm telling you, what hurts their feelings? Living on welfare for generations, or ended up in prison because you can't fill out a job application. Those are the kinds of things we can avoid. There's Virginia at what point was basing 4th grade reading levels on what their prison population needs were going to be. Now, if we're smart enough to do that, I'll guarantee you we're smart enough to get those kids reading again. And all the kids that get, there's another benefit of all of this. Sorry, you got me on my soapbox.
Oh, no, I love it.
Yeah. Matter of fact, if you got me in the Traverse City whiskey, boy, we'd really have a good time here today. Is that we have all of these folks are saying, give me free education, pay off my loans. My argument is, hey, let's create a volunteer corps. You can help teach these kids how to read, right? You want some money off of your student loan? Earn it.
Yeah.
Help America, help a community, help us get back to where we need to be to defend ourselves. And by the way, it might remind you that this country is bigger than all of us. It's bigger than ourselves, and we do have some obligation to the next generation. So I think there's lots of good that can come out of a program like this.
Wow, that's great. And very comprehensive, I must say.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I love it.
Nobody wants to hear the comprehensive.
No, I love it. I love it. So Michigan's a huge auto producer state, obviously. People think American auto manufacturing, they think Detroit, right? Biden's got these EV mandates. And you mentioned China earlier. Obviously, a lot of this stuff with the EVs benefits them, all of the capacity for these rare earths and the manufacturing of these batteries and whatnot. There's a lot of stuff that China controls. What are your thoughts on that and how it impacts a state like Michigan?
This is a disaster for a state like Michigan. And by the way, it's a disaster for America. 85% of everything processed in that electric vehicle has to happen in China. That's not changing. The only thing that's changing is the government's telling you, you must buy an electric car. Now, we saw what happened recently in Chicago, got really cold. Electric, apparently batteries, that we all knew this from school. When you get that cold, they don't have the same charge or distance. That people were stacked up at these chargers that weren't working. Right? That's really great if it's a lifestyle choice for you. It's not great if you're a mom trying to get your kids, get to the grocery store, pick them up from basketball, get them to volleyball. None of that works for them. And so I really think that there's a better way to do this. So 500 pounds of critical minerals, and you mentioned that most of that's processed in China. It's also developed by China around the world. They're cornering the market on nickel and cobalt and magnesium and all of these things.
And a lot in Afghanistan right now, right?
Afghanistan, the Chinese are actually building roads, and they're going to strip all of that out. I'll guarantee you the Afghans aren't going to see a penny of this. It is, and they're doing this in Africa and Afghanistan. Wherever those critical minerals are, guess where you're going to find the Chinese government, the Communist Party of China. They're there to help you, of course.
Yeah, a lot of direct foreign investment, and they take all your minerals.
Exactly. And you'll thank us for it eventually, because we'll tell you to thank us for it. You think about what that means for the U.S. economy. Transportation, automobile industry is about 1/7 of the economy. Imagine 85% of the cost of the processing of that going into that car is now going to be placed in China. You have put our automobile industry into the hands of the Communist Party of China, and to what end? 500 pounds of critical minerals makes one all-electric car, and that takes 4 tons of carbon out of the air. If you take that same 500 pounds, you can make 90 hybrid vehicles. That takes 140 tons of carbon out of the air. And by the way, you don't have to plug it in. You can stop at the gas station if you need to keep moving. You don't have to stop at one of those chargers that doesn't work somewhere and wait for 6 hours until somebody comes to pick you up or repair it. And so it's not fitting America's lifestyle to force this down the throats of Americans. And it's going to have a profound impact on our economy. And what they don't understand is car makers have a 5-year cycle. So when the government comes out and says by 2030, 2 out of 3 cars has to be electric, they have to already start changing the way they do business. I don't know at any time in history where the government came in and changed the way we do business that it worked out all that well for us. That's fundamentally what they're doing. And remember, some people say it's as much as 40% less labor to make that car, right? In Michigan, they actually invested U.S. taxpayer money and state of Michigan taxpayer money in a Chinese battery plant. They were partners in a plant it's called the Goshen plant. They're bringing in Chinese scientists to get it up and running, right? And by the way, it's 60 miles from Camp Grayling.
Yeah.
There's no travel restrictions on those Chinese scientists when they show up. And guess what happens at Camp Grayling? The United States military trains Taiwanese soldiers how to defend themselves against the Communist Party of China.
Oh.
I'm sure that's a coincidence. It's all coincidence,
Yeah,
I'm sure
right.
of it, right? And so you start thinking about how awful this is, and it just doesn't have to be. You want to let's take 140 tons of carbon if you want a less carbon environment. Let's do that. You can do that with hybrids. And by the way, we still keep all those UIW jobs.
Yeah. Wow. Well,
That was a mouthful.
that's great. It's great. I mean, I think about that stuff every single time I go to Target now, and it's freezing outside, and there's snow mounds, and all these people are freezing their ass off at the charging stations outside. But that was great.
Yeah, because you can't run the heater while you're charging.
Yeah,
'cause
right.
That takes you 8 hours to fill it.
Exactly. So every interview we do here on Ruthless, we end with 3 questions. These are important questions, and the listeners love to hear them. Question number 1 is, if you could plan it, what would be your last meal on Earth?
Ooh, boy. So my wife makes, we call it a peasant breakfast. She learned it in Costa Rica. Mm-hmm. Rico. She is, I would do that. It is, it's like this very spicy black bean mix.
Okay.
With, it's kind of we call them peasant eggs because everything goes in the eggs.
Right.
With tortillas. It's fantastic.
Nice.
I'm telling you, that would do it.
Wow, that sounds great.
Yeah. Come on over.
Well, and you don't have to worry about the heartburn because it's your last meal.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, actually, you know what? You get used to these black beans. Now, she swears to me that it has every superfood group in there. I said, just don't tell me that because I like the way it tastes.
Yeah. Don't tell me it's healthy.
Yeah, I don't want to know it's healthy.
I like it.
I kind of really like it.
Yeah. All right. So question number 2. If you didn't get into this, line of work, if you didn't work in law enforcement and serve in Congress, blue sky, if you could do anything in your life. Ted Cruz said he would be a basketball player, so you can kind of you can get
for
wild.
the moon.
Yeah, you can get wild with it. But if you didn't get into this line of work, what would you have done?
I would be a stand-up comic.
Oh, wow.
In Las Vegas.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm going to tell you something your listeners may fall down out of their chairs.
Okay.
I was a trained. My staff doesn't even know this. Are you ready?
Yeah.
For this?
I'm looking over at them.
Yeah,
They're a little nervous.
Yeah, they should be. I was a trained ventriloquist.
You're kidding me.
No, sir. So I had training as a ventriloquist, and when I was kind of going around high school, I'd go to these little events, and I would make like $25 to show up and entertain the kids.
Wow.
It was fantastic.
What was your ventriloquist dummy named?
His name was Lester.
Lester. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's a good one. That's a good
Yeah,
name.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now, you see all the kind of the modern transition of ventriloquism with all the puppets and all that, Jeff Durham and all of that. That a lot of that wasn't there when I was going through. It was the traditional old, they called them vents. They sit on your lap.
Yeah.
What's their expression over there at that side of the room right now?
Oh, they're okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They want to get into that Traverse City whiskey right now, don't they?
Well, let's really explore that. Let's explore that for a little bit.
Oh,
All right, so
not.
if you were going to get into stand-up comedy, did you ever try that sort of thing? Like,
I never did the stand-up
were
thing.
were you a joker in high school?
Well, my father looked at my grades and was pretty convinced I was a joker in high school. I would always do the contests.
Yeah.
It was fun. And my brother played guitar, and so we would write music where, kind of comedy music, if you will, where the ventriloquist would sing and it was a lot of fun.
It was like a real act.
Oh, I don't know about that, but we had fun doing it. But we won. But the only time we would never win is when the cute little, like 8-year-old was dancing and singing.
Yeah,
I lost every time.
Yeah, you can't beat that.
Yeah, I'm never following that ever.
All right, so final question. This one's a little esoteric. we think every successful person is motivated by one of two things: the thrill of victory or the agony of defeat. Michael Jordan's your classic agony of defeat guy, right? Every victory he celebrated for 2 seconds. Every loss, he hung around with him forever, and it motivated him to win in the future. On this spectrum, and we've seen a lot on both sides here, do you think you're a thrill of victory person or an agony of defeat person?
I'm probably more weighted. I've sampled both, but I'm probably more weighted to the victory side of things, only in the sense that when you taste defeat, even in my first race, quick story if I may.
Sure.
It was about 2:00 in the morning. I had to outperform in my home county. President George W. Bush was running for the first time in Michigan. And it was a pretty conservative county, pretty Republican, but I had to outperform him by like 4,000 votes. Mm-hmm. This is the President of the United States running.
Yeah.
Probably not going to happen. And so all the numbers came in, and my, at that time, campaign kind of manager came in, and she knocked on the door. We were watching the returns on TV, and she said, I come with bad news. You lost. There's just no way we can overcome the deficit that we found ourselves in, blah, blah, blah. So I went downstairs and I assembled up, and we had maybe 50 of the most wonderful, hardcore, passionate believers. At night and on weekends, they would volunteer and help. I mean, it was really a great group of people. And they were all volunteers, most of them. And we had a really good campaign team. Hardest speech I think I ever gave in my life was that night about talking about how we lost. Mm-hmm. Really hard. Pretty emotional moment for everybody in the room. And then we wrapped it up and said, okay, well, we'll dust ourselves off tomorrow, and we'll get, we'll find other ways to make a difference. And I tried to talk about the things that we had done that I thought we had made a difference along the way, but it's hard. Yeah. I mean, they killed themselves. All of us killed ourselves. And so I go back and I get in the car and I'm like, I'm not staying in the hotel here. I'm driving back home. I'm not doing this. So I get home, and I had the person that was working with me in the state senate. She was also kind of a key player on my campaign. She calls me, and I can't do her accent because she's an au pair from Denmark when she got here when she was 18. She's probably 50 by the most passionate American you'll ever meet in your life. Mm-hmm. And she calls me and goes, Congressman, that was my bad Danish accent right there. And I went, oh, that's funny. Yeah. That's really funny. She goes, no, you better get your fanny back here. You're up by 500 votes. And so I went in the period of about 8 hours having to give the worst speech of my life because we lost.
Yeah, it's a roller coaster.
Oh, my Lord. You want to talk about emotional roller coaster. So I get in the car and I drive back, and somebody says, well, and by the way, they found a bag of ballots, true story, under the clerk's desk. And we all looked around, and I said, hell with it. I'm going to give a speech. I'm at least going to be a congressman for 2 hours. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
So I'd like to think, my wife tells me it's a genetic defect. I'm an eternal optimist. I believe the country is going to get better because we're going to be determined to fix it. And I believe that we can fix it if we start putting forward real concrete solutions for really hard problems that people can get their arms around. We can't be just the party of grievance. We have to be the party of solution. No better solutions than from the conservative wing of the Republican Party that are going to help America.
Amen. And you brought a lot of those here today. We really appreciate it. If people want to help your campaign, where do they go?
Rogers for Senate, ROGERS, rogersforsenate.com. Love to have you. We need you. The Democrats are pouring money into this state. It's going to be one of the only open seat in the country for the Senate that we can flip, and we're pretty fired up about it. But it's going to take everybody helping out, every contribution, every bit of time. We need your time, your money, and a lot of times we'll need both. So please help us out. We're going to need it. And this is the opportunity to take back the United States Senate in Washington, D.C., and put us all right back on right track. That's why this is so important.
Mike Rogers, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
He's a hell of a guy.
He really is. And Michael, you did a great job with that interview.
Thank you.
And I think I think this guy can win. And this is despite Smug's attacks on his state. It's
just
one
the
of
city
the
of Detroit.
top cities.
Just the city of Detroit.
This guy actually, he's got the experience. He comes from the part of the state where somebody actually can win. And I'm excited about his campaign.
Yeah, well, I mean, when he first won that House district, it was a House district where Debbie Stabenow had moved on to the United States
Yeah.
Senate. Now she's no longer in that Senate seat. Maybe he's going to move on in.
Yeah.
We'll see.
A lot of nicknames for Debbie Stabenow.
Yep.
Yeah.
A lot of ones out there. No, listen, I think this race could be a very sneaky, awesome race for Republicans. They're not completely insulated from idiocy. Like, the way that we lose races like this is that you don't get candidates like that they have to fight these bloody primaries with fucking absolute dipshits. And I think that is the case here. Like, he's definitely got a primary. There's a couple different iterations of who he's fighting here. But, like, that's the guy who can get it done, in my view. And if he's there, if he's on the ballot, it's going to be a tight top of the ticket. I think he could win. I really do.
And we need the Senate. We need the Senate back.
We need it.
It's critical.
We need it. Great interview. Thanks for doing it. Fellas, I think we did it.
I think so. Absolute banger of an episode, gentlemen. And thank you so much to our listeners. Again, subscribe on YouTube if you have not yet. It is wonderful. Thank you so much to hopefully future Senator Mike Rogers. So until next time, Minions, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. We'll see you on Thursday. Stay ruthless.